Hi everyone, today's a bit of a different video. I'm going to be talking about how to face death as a student nurse, so stay tuned to hear my insights. So before I started placement, the thought of death absolutely terrified me. The thought of anybody dying, either close to me or a patient, my neighbour on the street, anybody, it will give me this shiver down my spine. And it still isn't something I'm completely comfortable with, but after seeing multiple people die on my previous placements, I've come to many conclusions about death and how people cope with it. So the first one is facing reality. I never used to think about death being inevitable for everyone, but the matter of the fact it is, and I know sometimes it comes to really young people when they're not expecting it, and that is the most horrific thing in the world, but it is inevitable for everyone to die. So now when I see people who are 90, 98, 95, whatever, who have lived a good life, part of me it's almost like a peaceful thing now. I look at it as like they've lived a great life. It's their time. It's like with my nana. I obviously never want her to go, and I can't even think about her passing, but at the same time she's 86. She's lived an amazing life. I know the time will come sooner rather than later. So facing reality and facing that inevitability, I think, is something really important, and I've definitely learned to do, although it doesn't make it easier. I'm just going to say that. So what encouraged me to make this video was I just finished watching an episode of 24 Hours in A&E, which is actually one of my favourite shows, and basically one of the consultants said something really interesting at the start. I'll read it out to you what he said now. He said, "We are made to feel like we are invincible, but it's until we are faced with difficult times we realise we are not." And that just clicked with me. I was like, nobody thinks they're going to end up in A&E today. Unless you have like a chronic illness or something, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about sudden acute onsets of things. Nobody thinks they're going to end up in A&E. Everyone goes around life thinking they're invincible, and even if you don't, you never think it's going to happen to you. I certainly think, even when I'm cycling my bike, although so many people have died cycling, I never think I'm going to be the one to die cycling, or I never think I'm going to be the one to be knocked down. But it's until that you realise it can be you, it just makes you never want to take life for granted. Another thing I've learned from A&E is the same motto. Another thing the consultant said, he was saying that nobody wakes up today or tomorrow and thinks, I'm going to go to A&E. Just like what I was saying there, it's something that just happens, and everyone's like, how did this happen to me? Why me? I wasn't expecting it. And then they wish that they did things differently, or they wish they hadn't have said that that wish they weren't mean to somebody, or they wish they hadn't had that last fight with their parents, or things like that. And it really hit home with me, and I just really, from now on, don't want to take life for granted. And this is a really different type of video for me, so it feels a bit strange making it, but I think it's super important to realise that we just can't take life for granted, and we never know who it's going to be. It could be me tomorrow, I don't know. So I think from now on I'm going to just not take any little thing for granted, and never not say I love you before your boyfriend leaves or anything, because you just don't know when it's the last time you'll see someone. There's something actually my boyfriend talks about, being negative visualization, which basically where he kind of pictures the worst case scenario of things, but that inevitably changes your perspective of things. So it was like, before we moved into the flat we're currently in, he would visualize that it was going to be a lot worse than it was. So when he came into this flat, he was like, it's amazing. And I was like, no, it's not, I don't like it. And he was like, Claire, I pictured it as being something worse, and now that I'm in it, anything is better than what I've visualized. So I've been using that, and I think it's just really helped me to put life into perspective and realise that actually the little things we worry about just don't matter, and that there's way bigger issues in the world that have to be tackled before we start complaining about, I don't know, I can't even think of an example, but there's many things we, including me, complain about on a daily basis that are just not even worth our breath. Facing death as a student nurse requires you to talk to people. And the first time I experienced death, I kept it all in me. I didn't want to talk to anyone about it. I just kept overthinking. And that night when I went to bed, I saw the patient's face like so vividly. But I realised that's not the best way to go about it, because if you suppress your emotions, you just keep pushing them down. And then one night when you're drunk, or I don't know, I'm feeling emotional, it will all come back up to the surface. So I think dealing with it at the time, if you can, is super important. Even just going to your mentor and being like, would you mind talking about what happened today when the patient died for 5 minutes? I'd really appreciate just offloading to somebody, because I think as student nurses and nurses, we need to talk about what we're feeling more. And if we find something really difficult to see, we need to have a place we can go to talk about that. It shouldn't be all bottled up, because at the end of the day, if you keep bottling things up, the bottle is one day just going to explode and you're not going to be in control of how you're feeling. While if you try and deal with it at the time, or maybe a few days after the event, at least then you can process what you're feeling, find out why you're upset. Maybe it's a similar situation that happened to someone in your family, and it's completely understandable to be so upset about it, but I think talking about it makes a huge difference. So just like talking about it, it's also really important to not just associate death with old people, because death can be anywhere. It can be in the smallest of babies to the elderly. It can be in anyone. So I've realised recently that I don't want to label death to just being an event that happens to old people, because that's not true. It can happen to anyone at any stage of their lives. So this comes back to not taking things for granted. It all links together. That's why I wanted to make this video, to bring light to facing death as a student nurse, because it can be difficult. And I know this video might have not given you practical advice, like step by step on how to deal with it. And if you want, I can make a video in the future of maybe 5 steps to dealing with death, like step by step. But this video is kind of just to bring awareness to death and not stigmatize it, and not have oh, we can't talk about that. I want to make an open conversation about death, and I want people to feel like they can talk to other people about what they see in practice. Obviously, all confidentiality is so important, but also just so that you don't feel like you're dealing with it alone, because that's something I found horrible in my first few placements. I would see something traumatizing and be too scared to go to my mentor and be like, I wasn't comfortable with seeing that. Going to somebody can make the world of difference, and maybe not necessarily coming home and telling your partner or family about it. You can do that as well, but then you're dragging them into it. So I feel like somebody in the workplace is really important to talk to when you face death as a student nurse. So I hope this video maybe helped even just one of you, and if it did, send me a message and I would love to reply to every single one of you. My Instagram bio is in the link below, so I'll reply to all messages there if you don't feel like commenting. And thank you so much for watching, guys. See you soon.